Hello and welcome to Dude, Are You Nuts? A humble home restoration series. This is me, for some reason looking a little bit smug. I'm going to do my viewers a favor and not appear again in this series, as far as I know. And may I introduce my supporting cast. They're also not expected to appear in the series, but they're out there in the background. Thanks so much. And here's the real star of the show. The 1920 vintage Foreman house badly needs a renovation. The goal of this project is to renovate it in every reasonable way to match the way it was built in 1920. At the same time, of course, to integrate subtly, to the extent that we can, all the necessary upgrades and technologies that are typical of a house 100 years later. But first, some housekeeping. How happy I am today to introduce to you the official Dude, Are You Nuts logo. After many months of preparations, our corporate image department has finally come up with this. Why, do you ask, is this series named Dude, Are You Nuts? Well, of course, there's a story. To facilitate the financing of this project, I considered getting a construction loan for a little while. So one day, in order to close the loan, the construction lender sent over their appraiser. When he arrives, he says, "Hey, Paul, this is my process. I like to go upstairs and start at the top left and work my way down." So that's where he went. This being the internet, I can use colorful language to describe what he found. This is the shittiest corner of the house. The roof was falling in, you can almost see the sky, water all over the floor. Within 45 seconds, he's back down in the street. And he's pissed. He said something unintelligible to me about me being a crook, or the bank being crooked, or I don't really know, but he takes off. Wait, what? I see him turning around and he comes back. He rolls down the window and he says to me, "Let me give you some advice. It's worthless. Dude, are you nuts?" And the rest is history. First of all, let me thank the internet for providing me with this graphic. What's the point? So we can talk about, well, what's the point? I'm so sorry to tell you as your host that I don't know what the point is. Perhaps I'm just memorializing our journey, which I'm sure will hit the internet like a noise in the forest. Maybe, I don't know how this project is going to turn out because we're just starting, but maybe we'll be able to illustrate a triumph over lunacy in time. Finally, possibly, entertainment for you, we'll find out. Or perhaps it's a public service. I'm not really sure, but is it helpful to society if I warn others not to do this and go back? Well, it's too early in our process to know what the moral of the story is, but quite possibly, you shouldn't follow in my footsteps. Thanks again to the internet for providing this Our Promise graphic, because this is my opportunity to speak about fake news and the journalistic integrity that we maintain here at Dude, Are You Nuts? We're going to reveal all kinds of stuff to you, including what it really costs. Probably have a few amusing diversions along the way. A guarantee of much self-effacing drivel from me, and yes, schadenfreude for you. You're grown-ups, certainly you know by now what schadenfreude is, but I'm going to provide as a public service a definition. Experiencing pleasure, joy, or self-satisfaction that comes from learning of or witnessing the troubles of another. It's a complex emotion displayed more in children than adults. In the unlikely event you choose to take this journey with us, you're likely to experience schadenfreude about my situation and my headaches. Don't feel badly and don't feel guilty. You're not alone. I'm going to interrupt your follow-on question by providing the answer that it's a German word. I'm giving you the English pronunciation. It was first mentioned in English texts in 1852 and 1867 and first used in English running text in 1895. Okay, I needed to know. What is English running text? Sounded like some sort of a jogging enthusiast magazine or something from the late 1800s. No, it only means that 1895 is the first time they found it in the body of an article as opposed to a headline. I spent a little bit of time going back and looking at the history of 1895, but my producer says I can't spend more time on this particular rabbit hole, so forward we must go. First, welcome to Healdsburg, dead center on your map with a little heart over it, of course, in between the Sonoma Valley and Napa Valley. It's wine country. Healdsburg's a great small town. In the picture, you can see the town square, which is well known. Just beyond the horizon, by not too many blocks, is wine, wine, and more wine as far as you can see in every direction. And yes, I'm happy to report to anybody out there who's stalking, the house is in fact in this picture. For this next section, let me thank the internet again for this inexplicable graphic that helps us introduce our small section. Let's look back. I think it's really important in the act of restoring this 100-year-old house to have some historical perspective on what was going on in and around the area in California and Sonoma County in 1920. What historical analysis could be complete without some population data? Healdsburg in 1920 had 2,400 people, a very small town. Sonoma County, a large county today, only 52,000 people in 1920. The state of California had only 3.4 million people. There's 40 million in California today, in case you didn't know. So it really was a quiet, bucolic time in Healdsburg. Let's talk about architecture. First of all, let's talk about architecture with the backdrop that I have no idea what I'm talking about, and I'm not qualified to lecture you about architecture. But I can Google as well as anybody, and I came up with a couple of things that I thought were interesting about prevailing house styles in the late 1800s and early 1900s. And what beautiful homes they are. These styles, which Google has helped me highlight as the most prevalent: Italianate, Second Empire, and Queen Anne. They're spectacular. Beautiful detail, upright homes. But change is in the air. And right around the corner in the early 1900s is the almost revolution of the bungalow style home. More relaxed, very affordable for many Americans. And thanks to Bungalows and Cottages on Instagram for providing this example of something that has been widely seen to represent the inexpensive and wonderful bungalow style. The subject of our humble series is the Foreman house, previously introduced to you, which is in the style called Airplane Bungalow. May I also introduce to you the McDonnell Douglas DC-3 aircraft, one of the truly iconic airframe designs of the 20th century. Using the modern miracle of cutting and pasting, I'm able to put the house at left and the airplane at right. You can see the resemblance, right? Big sweeping wings and a cockpit which juts up above the wing line. You can see where the name came from. And yet there's a problem. My house, vintage 1920, the DC-3 aircraft was from the 1940s. Our research department was able to find this artist sketch from 1928 of an aircraft that was probably never built. It still doesn't explain the difference between our 1920 build date and the name Airplane Bungalow, but I think we can probably conclude that the name was coined later in this bungalow's life. This gives us an opportunity for one of our trademark diversions. Again, I want to thank the internet for this fantastic sign atop a cupcake, which I can't explain, but I can put to good use. Let's discuss, shall we, the DC-3. Perhaps this was a golden age of aviation in the 1940s. The men in suits, the ladies beautifully dressed, a set table. It looks fantastic. Well, it looks like train travel, which was the most common way of moving around in the 1940s. That may have been a first-class cabin, because looking toward the back, you could see something that looks more typical of airplane flying today, or at least how it was in 2019. Everyone is still well-dressed, but here is the beginning of commercial aviation as we knew it, a golden era. So even 20 years after our house was built, cross-country airplane travel was challenging. The DC-3 cruised at 207 miles an hour, maybe a third of what airplanes fly at today. 21 to 32 passengers, it's a small aircraft, and it's flying at only 10,000 feet. By the way, it's a prop plane. Have you flown on one of those? Not a jet engine, but great big fan blades. Eastbound from California to get all the way across, 3 refueling stops, a 15-hour grueling trip. Coming back against the wind, as many of you know who have done the trip, in the DC-3, it was 17 and a half hours or more coming back. And one last thing before we leave this rabbit hole. Amazingly, a large number of DC-3 aircraft are still actively flying in commercial and military service around the world. We've named our project house the Foreman House in honor of the original builders and owners, the Foremans. This is actually not a picture of the Foremans. It's a picture of what I imagined them to look like. They were prosperous people, and it was time for them to retire. They built a retirement home. They were prune ranchers in Healdsburg or nearby. I didn't even know prune ranching was a thing. There's a pretty good chance that they owned a car that looks like this. There weren't tons of cars in the hood at that time. It would be appropriate that prosperous people like the Foremans may have had a car. Yes, you guessed it, another diversion to talk about prunes. In the early 1900s, the area that extends from Santa Rosa to Cloverdale was known as the prune belt of Sonoma County. Who knew? The crop did well in the warmer climate here. Prunes were a big business in the early days. There was a huge annual prune blossom festival, because these are beautiful, flowering plum trees at the beginning. The start of the school year was often delayed, so Sonoma County school children could assist in the prune harvest. Oh boy, things have changed. Our research department is super proud of the fact that we've scored this historic postcard showing the flowering plum trees in and around Healdsburg back in the day. But wait, we gotta stop the regular programming here because genuinely, I don't know what the fuck is going on. Okay, sorry, let's clean that up. Welcome to an exclusive subscriber-only Dude Are You Nuts investigative reporting segment. Once and for all, please will someone help me understand plums versus prunes? Okay, thank you, Google. Let's see if we can figure this out. A prune is a dried plum of any cultivar. A cultivar is a plant that's been cultivated. Okay, I get it. Most prunes are freestone cultivars, meaning the pit is easy to remove. Plums, however, that are grown for fresh consumption, the pit's more difficult to remove. I think I get that. As usual, I'm probably the last guy in America to understand this matter. But there was a name change, and here's your tax dollars at work. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration has helped us sort this out. Guess what? Prunes aren't called prunes anymore. Now I'm starting to understand. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration got involved. Prunes had sort of this stodgy solution, the constipation quality to their image, and I guess the growers of plums were a little bit sick of it. So a prune is now a dried plum. A plum is still a plum. I think I'm starting to get it. So here's some plums. They get dried out in the sun, and the consequence is a huge number of prunes. And they were sold widely in California back in the day. So what are all these prunes for? Well, the Sunshine Prunes Company label reveals all. Down there in the bottom right, which we've dutifully highlighted for you, delicious for sauce, pies, puddings, and cakes. Wow. For additional historic context, let's remember that the U.S. is voted dry at the beginning of 1919. So the Foreman House, built in 1920, that was the first full year of Prohibition. And I feel sad about the Foremans having to begin their retirement in a dry country. I wouldn't do it. Can you imagine it took more than 13 years for Prohibition to be repealed? I don't even know if the Foreman survived that long. But the repeal of Prohibition in Sonoma and Napa created an opening for a new industry, perhaps more exciting than prunes.
I'm praying for rain in California so the grapes can grow and they can make more wine.
Yes, it's wine. Wine. Back to 2020, here's our project. The house had fallen on hard times at age 100, severely overgrown around it, deferred maintenance outside and inside, greatly outdated systems, and of course, 100 years later, shifting, settling, all kinds of wonky repairs, a lot to do. A quick house tour for the house as it stands now. You enter into a foyer, and then from inside, looking back at the foyer, you can come to appreciate the opportunity to restore this house. Look at these beautiful wood columns that exist in mint condition today. Next up is our living room. So too in the living room do we enjoy mint condition, original woodwork, and the mantle. Really a beautiful room. Floors need some work, but that's to be expected, of course. In his famous book about craftsman homes, Gustav Stickley spoke about the living room, saying it is unquestionably the most important room in the house. The business of life may be carried on freely and with pleasure, the place to which a person comes home when the day's work is done and expects to find themselves comfortable and at ease in surroundings that are in harmony with daily life. A living room that is structurally interesting and in which the woodwork and color scheme are good has a satisfying quality not dependent on pictures, bric-a-brac, or furnishings. It is a room that welcomes you in and invites you to sit down comfortably, according to me, and we're excited about the prospects for our restored living room. The dining room is up next, and I'm as surprised as you are to learn that everything inside is perfect condition, the original sideboard, and the fantastic pass-through toward the left to our kitchen. The kitchen comes up next. The graphics department here at Dude Are You Nuts has cobbled together this montage to give you a sense of what the kitchen looks like now. There are a number of original, interesting features, but it wasn't an expensively built kitchen, and there won't be much here that we get to save. Flipping through the rest of the house, 2 bedrooms, 2 other bathrooms. There's this wonky little nook thing toward the back of the house. There's also sort of a bonus room off of what was probably the master bedroom. Doesn't really matter because we're going to extensively renovate this part of the house. As you already figured out, there's a cupola style upstairs, a small room, oddly with a staircase coming right up the middle of it. Also a spooky but unmistakably important basement level. I don't know who this guy is, but he's going to introduce our next section, which is to summarize the project, and then we can let you go. Our front porch is a signature part of the house. It, however, needs to be replaced. It's falling down. Next up, the masonry chimney. Well, it's not built to modern standards. It's going to have to go and be replaced in its entirety. The upper level is going to have to be removed and replaced. Wait, don't panic. Just to give you a sense of where we're heading with this, the new upper level is depicted here. So it's going to snuggle right into the existing roof line. If you know anything about windows from 1920, you probably could guess the fact that they've all got to go. Modern windows that hopefully retain perfectly the original look are the goal. Sadly, there are 42 of them to be replaced in the house. Once we disturb the windows and the surrounding stucco, it's been determined that we might as well replace all the stucco for the entire building. And yes, we're going down, we're going to excavate. Because what's the point of a partial basement when there's an opportunity to add so much space below ground? And we're gonna. In my mind's eye, excavating under this house will look something like this. But wait, fake news alert. Full disclosure, this is the construction of a parking garage in Munich where apparently they've got all kinds of parking issues. It's right under the Alstradring between Issertor and Maximilianstrasse something? Anyway, you get the idea. I've already disclosed to you that we're going to whack off the wonky back part of this house, which was poorly built and inexplicably designed. Here's a couple of pictures to give you a sense of what we're going to be removing. And this depicts an extension to this part of the house where we're going to make for a bigger kitchen. But wait, just as I was putting the finishing touches on this presentation, I got an email from my contractor to my architect and me. Love you guys. However, this came as a surprise. Gentlemen, I finally got a house mover to talk to me. I just sent him my information. The cost of raising the house will be additional. Hey, wait, what? Raising? Who's raising? Who's moving? What's going on? This is my schadenfreude meter, and I could feel my audience saying, ha, 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 this dude is nuts. He's going to have to jack up at the house or something too. It's going to break his budget, and he's going to go home crying. Stop enjoying this moment. I've got this. That's enough for today. We'll be back soon with episode 2 of Dude, Are You Nuts? Possible topics are the detailed floor plan and how we got there. We might have some special guests on board if I can pressure them into participating who could actually teach us something, and more of my useless diversions and unrelated information, rest assured. I'd like to thank our prospective sponsors who have not paid promotional consideration whatsoever, but we're hoping they'll do something for us. The Healdsburg Lumber Company of Healdsburg, California, and Marvin Windows, War Road, Minnesota. Promotional consideration has also not yet been paid by the National Ready Mix Concrete Association. I'm not sure what they can do for me, but I'm sure it's plenty. Also, Tesla. Keep your cars. I just want a home battery and solar roof tile system. And of course, Duke's Spirited Cocktails, which among its many, many fine offerings is the convenience of them being just a couple of blocks from the house. Thank you guys. I'll be there more and more as the project continues. And for the avoidance of doubt, free drinks constitutes promotional consideration. Major funding provided by our sponsors, hopefully, and viewers like you. Thank you. I always wanted to say that. We'll sign off today with a little help from Bev Boz, Tom Hunter, and Michael Lehman. See you next time.
Gonna build me a house. Gonna build me a house with a chimney. And when the house is built, gonna live in my little white house. Gonna build me a house. Gonna build me a house with a chimney. When the house is built, gonna live in my little white house. Gonna get me a saw. Gonna get me a saw for to cut with when the lumber's cut. Gonna get me a hammer. Gonna get me a hammer for to pound with when the boards are nailed and the lumber's cut. Gonna live in my little white house. Gonna build me a house.